RV Renovation Nation. Welcome to the New Look RV Renovation Podcast.
Today we're talking with a couple whose sanity and relationship were both tested through RV renovation and travel. Em and Jane's willingness to learn and persevere through challenges is not just an example of how to be successful at RV renovation, but how to thrive in life and relationships.
So let's talk life and schoolies with Em and Jane of Camp Lovesick.
You guys sound like you've done this other times, so you're experts.
Just a couple times, yeah. But
yeah, which is more than most. So
we're not,
we're not pros. We don't have a podcast agent booking our appearance.
Not yet. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Well, first of all, Em and Jane, welcome to the podcast. Thanks so much for spending this time with us. We're really excited to hear your story.
We're happy.
Yeah, for sure.
Here. Yeah, thanks so much for having us.
Yeah.
And we want to largely deep dive a little bit on Schoolies and your experiences there. But I guess first and foremost, we'd like to just hear a little bit about how we've arrived here. How did you guys get into the concept of tiny living? How did you get into RV renovation?
Wow.
There's got to be a story there.
Oh my God, there's so many stories.
Yeah.
I think there's a story for each section.
It starts with the schoolie though, so we can maybe start there, say how it progressed, and then turn around and come back.
Yeah, it definitely started with a schoolie for sure.
Mm-hmm. So we married and then having a normal, chill suburban life. But before we did that, we wanted to just do kind of one last hurrah of a trip. So we started looking into kind of smaller trips that we could take, but Em is a teacher, and so the way that the school system works, it was either we take a 2-month trip or we take a 14-month long trip.
And just traveling in the peak tourist season is like great, but it's really expensive. And it's also like, then you're just crowded with people and you might not get those authentic experiences. So we're like, oh, I wish we could just go like in February, but you can't just take a month off teaching because they already give you your summers. So it was kind of like, well, what if we just, and since we can't get everything that we want to see in the summer, why don't we just take the year off and we go traveling? And then that kind of led us to, well, if we're going to take a year to go traveling, why don't we build a bus for it? Because I was obsessed with them at the time anyway. So they were always on my radar, and tiny homes and that kind of thing. And we just figured if we take the rent that we would have been paying for that full year and save that rent up kind of in advance, but now use that as our budget to build the schoolie, then we're not actually losing any money. Like, it costs us the same to be traveling as it would be to just be living our regular lives in suburbia. So we figured, hey, like, the math checks out, let's do this. But we had no building experience. Like, we built a shelf one time and like it was
constantly falling down.
It was bound to kill someone.
So proud. And I feel like that's the thing. We had zero experience, 100%, maybe 300% confidence.
Yes,
like
so much confidence. We had so much confidence with no experience.
Yeah. So we built this schoolie, traveled in it for 9 months, and then COVID happened and we had to go back to Canada where we're from.
So we still got a good trip in.
Yeah,
exactly. We were cut 6 months. We're 6 months short.
Yeah, and so we had these 6 months where we'd already said, hey, we're not working. So we'd already like canceled our jobs. We didn't really have a place to stay. So we just moved to Emily's parents' house and said,
we couldn't even find a place to stay because everything was closed.
Yeah.
Like in Canada, it's like no one was even doing open houses or anything. It's like, please do not leave your house. Yeah. So we were like, okay, well, I guess we'll stay at my parents' house because where else are we going to go?
And like, we couldn't work, and it just killed us to be sitting at home spending our trip money and not doing anything.
Because this was like our hard-earned dollars that we knew were going to adventure. And now it's like, it's going to literally the furthest thing from adventure. It's going to you spending your first year married sitting at home with your in-laws. Like, that's like, oh, it's like the opposite of adventure. We love my parents, but still, like, sorry.
So we met this woman when we were traveling who had bought an RV and converted it and sold it. And we said, hey, we built one thing one time. We can do that.
Well, we built
and we built our bus. Yeah. And so we tried it out, I think, 5 days after we got back home, we bought and had delivered our first RV, and
we just decided, like, let's take all the money, the remaining money that we had saved for the trip, and put it into this camper. And maybe it'll make us more money, or maybe it will have just been a fun thing that kept us busy and kept us like feeling positive and working on something versus just sitting, twiddling our thumbs, wishing we could see our friends that we hadn't seen in a year. Started with the passion of travel that led to Schoolies. And then that kind of gave us the building bug that as we were traveling, we were kind of like, oh, like, we know this trip has to end, but how can we somehow bring this sense of adventure back into our normal lives? Because just the regular suburbia, you know, full-time job thing wasn't seeming as appealing as it was before we left on the trip. We sold our first camper last August, and it just like sold within like a few days. Like, it was so, and like we had a bunch of people coming to see it, and news covered our story and that kind of thing. And it was just like, oh my gosh, we had so much fun doing it, and we love being creative, and we love just building and taking our passion for interior design into something. And then it was so cool to be able to sell it, one, to show that we could do this as a business for ourselves, but then two, we were selling it to this family who was so thrilled that now they got to start adventure and do the kinds of things that we were loving doing, and they got to do it because of us. And that was like this extra, you know, cherry on top kind of thing. And then we're like, whoa, we got to keep doing this. It was meant to just be kind of a one-off thing, and we were just pretending like it was a business because it made it seem way more credible. But for the person who wanted to buy it, we were like, yeah, this is a thing we're doing now. But we didn't know if it was going to continue.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Now we're like, oh yes.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So then we bought another camper in January and have been working on that one.
So let's slow down for a second. So just backing up a hair. So you mentioned that tiny living and Schoolies, you know, had been on your radar previously, you know, to this. What put them on your radar?
I don't even know if I know, to be honest. Like, it just happened. Like, YouTube, obviously, for sure, is like the main culprit. But I don't know. I was in university at the time. Jane and I were living apart, like 2 hours drive apart from one another. So we would just see each other on weekends. And during the week, you know, I'd finish school, and then I was a university student. What else are you going to do? So you're thinking about, you're dreaming up what your future could look like. And I don't know, my parents, when they were our age, when they were newly married, they went on the 6-month backpacking trip through Asia. And they just like, it really shaped them as a couple. And I've always had that in my back of my mind of like, oh, I want to do that with my future partner. Like, I want to do some sort of thing that's going to allow us to get to know each other even more and start us on the right foot of adventure in the rest of our lives together. And I don't know, I got obsessed with tiny homes through YouTube, but there wasn't any one memory. Like, people ask like, oh, where did it come from? I'm like, I don't really know. Just general boredom and looking on the internet, I think maybe is the answer. And I told Jane in university, like, oh, we should build a bus after I graduate. And like, we should build a bus and we should do this. And she was like, okay,
I said
sure.
Absolutely, knowing with 100% certainty that it would never happen.
So she was just letting me have my dream
and be like, yeah, that's not gonna happen. So might as well like say yes.
But she never said no. But she said yes. Like, she said yes because she knew it wasn't gonna happen. But what she didn't realize is that if she says yes, like it's gonna happen. Like, I'm gonna make it happen.
So for the audience that might not know, you know, maybe they're new to this, what is a bus or a schoolie? Like, what's that even mean?
So a schoolie is a school bus. So like a yellow North American school bus. I mean, it could be any bus, but that's what I'm picturing.
Yeah.
And you take the school bus. We bought ours off of, like, it's called Kijiji, but it's like your Craigslist, your kind of secondhand online thing. But you get it from an old school district or somewhere.
Just a strange man in a parking lot is where you buy these things, I swear.
You got them completely taken out all the kids' seats, all the PB&J sandwiches, all the Band-Aids, all that. And you like put new insulation in, you can add new windows, but you essentially turn it into an RV. You turn it into a camper. And it was really appealing to us getting into this because we didn't have a truck. We didn't have anything that could tow that could tow a camper. So for us, it was actually cheaper to buy a school bus and renovate it ourselves than it would have been to buy a cheap camper that maybe was even $500 and renovate it, because we had nothing to tow it with. Whereas a school bus tows itself. So it was cheaper than buying a truck and a camper, which we felt like we didn't want to do. So, and then it just felt fun. Like it just felt like a really ridiculous, youthful thing to do.
You were going to school to be a teacher at that time too?
I was, and my kids were like really into the fact that, like, it was playing definitely into the myth that teachers live and teach and never leave the school. Like they live at the school, because now it's like, oh, and you drive a school bus. Like people, like they just thought teaching was my everything. So they were really into it. They loved this idea at the time.
So Jane, at what point did you realize that Em was calling your bluff? And was it kind of when she was shopping the Schoolies, or?
Much later. Honestly, it was like when I had $4,000 in my hand ready to pass it over to this like random parking lot man, was when I was like, are we really doing this? Like I still wasn't sure.
She likes to joke that still to this day she doesn't know if it's gonna happen. And I'm like, well, it happened, and we lived in it for 9 months. So I don't know. We were shopping for school buses and we had seen a few, and she was still like, I don't know. Like, we don't know if we're doing this yet. Like, who knows if this will actually happen.
This is a fun weekend getaway to this weird small town, and then we'll go to another one and meet people who own buses and sell them. But
hitting on that point, maybe you have more perspective now. What is it that you're looking for? When you're shopping a bus that you might, convert, are there specific things that you guys are looking for that people should maybe keep an eye out for?
Definitely. It definitely changes. I will say it definitely changes based on where you live, in the sense of, in Canada, we have a lot of ice and snow on the roads in the winter. So how we deal with it is we pour salt everywhere to get traction. So because of that, we have a lot of rust underneath our vehicles. So if you're in a place that has a lot of rust, or at what I've heard, like in California, since there's just so much salt air in the air, I guess they have different forms of rust. I don't know. I can't speak to California very much. But what I can say is I know specific to our kind of region, where we live, they use a lot of salt on the roads. So it really corrodes the underneath. So that was one thing that we had to really make sure. It was like, we, Google some things to look at, like Google what does a spring leaf mean and what should it look like, and like you find these little terms and these things of, hey, what would rust fastest on a vehicle, and you go and look under. But essentially school buses are just trucks. Just the back of where the truck bed is meant to hold children. So it's like a big box, but the front of them, the engines and the underneath are the same as like a Ford truck.
Yeah, so, especially ours, because we ended up getting a smaller one where it was exactly the same.
Yes, I will say for sure, for full length Schoolies, like full length buses, they are a different beast entirely. But for the small ones, ours was 5 windows long. They're the same full engine as just like standard trucks. So as long as you can and there's a lot of research out there for you to look at how to figure out if it's worthwhile or not. But for us, we just did a once over when we showed up to the new places and looked for rust, look for any holes in the floor, because you can't, at least in Canada, you can't transfer over vehicles to a new owner if there's holes in the floor that have to be fixed, and that could be like really expensive. So any kind of rust stuff was our main thing. Yeah. And then, does it turn on and does it break? like does it go and stop?
But then we also, for 2 buses,
so we first did the once over for ourselves.
Yeah.
And then once we were like, okay, with our no knowledge, we think this is a good deal. Like this one looks good.
Then we would pay a mechanic to come out and just also do a look through of everything. So we did that for 1 bus, and the mechanic that we hired said, like,
do not buy this. Like, this is a huge waste of money. Yeah. They were like, not only do I think that it's a big waste of money and would cost so much to fix this bus because it just had rusted spots or whatever. They were like, I don't even think anyone will take on this project because it's so much work. Like, I don't think you could pay anyone to do this. To do it. Yeah. So we were like, whoa, okay, that was worth $50 knowing not to buy this thing.
For sure.
Well, that's what would worry me.
really good vibes about.
Yeah.
And then we took it to a mechanic, and they came to us and were like, what are you buying this for? Oh, like, you're getting a really good deal. Definitely he should be charging you more. And we're like, amazing, we will take this.
That's super amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah. I guess patience is another thing.
Yeah, don't take the first thing that you see.
We were like so excited, and every single bus we saw, we were pretty much ready to take it, and then had to step back and go, okay.
Were you pretty much looking for that size? Like, were you trying to keep it?
Yeah. We were specifically looking for that size for sure, because we wanted, it's the maximum. The bus that we got is 20 feet long, and that's the maximum like parking space size. So technically it's still like a truck. Like it would block in everyone else if they park close to the lines, but technically it can fit still in one parking spot. And that really opens a lot, because then you're never restricted on like campgrounds, or a lot of national parks have lengths of vehicles that they permit in the national park. And for us, that was our main plan, was like, let's see as much as we can and see as many national parks as you possibly can in Canada and the States. Yeah. And so sticking in that size really opened up the trip for us, for sure.
For sure.
What's on the big size? Like what have you seen people?
Like 40 feet.
Yeah. So it's, most of buses are either 20 feet or 40 feet. There's like a few in between ones.
They're hard to find, but they look so good. The ones that are like 30 feet are the exact happy medium. They're so good. But yeah, I wanted to switch halfway through. I was like, I want to switch to a slightly bigger one, just because I was jealous of the people who had showers and like things like this, and we didn't do that. But honestly, people with a 20-foot bus still have those things too. We just didn't prioritize it. But I will say it's a 20-foot bus. The interior was 12 feet. So it's the interior living space is 12 by 7 feet. So so it's small. Like it's a van practically that you can fully stand up in. But it just definitely gets a few more head stairs than a van driving down the road.
All right, so you've given this guy in the parking lot your money. You own a bus. How does one go about renovating a bus? Like, where did you guys start?
We started by gutting it as much as we could.
Well, I guess we started by watching every YouTube video we possibly could watch. And then just feeling like we knew what was going on, and buying an angle grinder. Those things are essential for school buses.
Oh, for sure.
There's so many metal things you just have to like grind away. Like it's just wild. And then we gutted it. So take out all the seats, rip up the gross like linoleum and plywood flooring that they have on there.
And it had like a nice like cottage cheese rotting situation under the floor.
Like, it makes my stomach ill to this day, remembering that moment of ripping up that flooring.
It was a subfloor or something, like a padding or what?
No, it was just like rotted. Like it had the wood had rotted in between the two layers, just because, you know, they don't build these things to last very long. So ripping out everything, ripping out the insulation, resealing everything so there's no possible spots for leaks. And when we were doing that, there was so many rainstorms, so it was like the perfect test. I was like, okay, well, nothing's ever dripping, so we should be good. And then re-insulating everything, like framing up the floor, building up the floor, and then starting to work on like
the
putting the stuff in, like the layout.
We started with kind of our very easiest things that we knew we could do, and then progressed to harder things. Like we started by building our bed, because that's basically a plywood sheet, and then
legs,
6 legs, and maybe 4 of the legs touched the
we called them emergency legs, because they didn't actually touch, they were too short. But we're like, if the other legs break, these ones are here in case of emergency. So nothing ever happened. I will mention, we are selling the bus soon, and we are going to be fixing these things now that we have better skills. So I will say we are not selling them with the emergency legs. We will actually put in proper things, but nothing actually broke. So obviously it shows you could do a way worse job than you think you have to for it to be fine. But we didn't know how to use anything. Like we used a drill one time, and that was it. So, you know, we were using all of our tools were from a local tool library that we had access to. And they just lent out the tools, and then we took them, and then we were Googling like how to turn on circular saw, like where to hold, like just make sure your hands aren't in the way. And We
awesome.
hadn't used anything. So
And so I would imagine when someone takes on, something like a bus, generally they're starting, clean slate, gutting it. It's this big, at least, in the world of RV renovation, it's kind of like this big open space. Is there a common approach there? Is there like, more often than not, do people put a certain sort of space, whether it's a bedroom or a dining room, like at the back? And
it comes down to like a couple layouts pretty much that you'll find online. A really popular one is one that we did, which is having a permanent bed in the back of the school bus. So the very back of the bus turned sideways. So you're kind of sleeping horizontally in the bus is a permanent bed. That's really popular. And we went for that too, because I was like, I don't want to feel like I'm camping and making my bed every day. I want it to be like, this is my comfortable bed. And then I want to be outside hiking. Like I don't need this dinette thing that also pulls out into the, I just was like, I want it to be just easy.
Yeah.
So that was what we went for. And then you kind of up the sides, and it always ends up being, though I've seen in the 40-foot layouts, you can do a lot, but in a 12-foot interior space, there's only so many options. But then it kind of ends up being, you have something on either side of, on each wall. So for us, we have on the right side of our bus is a couch that flips up, has storage underneath, or fridge underneath, that kind of thing. So it's this massive couch, like 6 feet long.
It's 6'6". It's really long.
Huge. Because we built it to be a single bed for if our tallest person we know, which is her brother, if he ever came and visited us, which he didn't. So I guess it wasn't needed. But anyway, so we built that out. And then the flip side, the other side is the kitchen. So we have the couch with storage underneath. And then just beside the couch, we have
Our toilet.
a little coffee table that the top of the coffee table flips up actually, and underneath the coffee table is where the composting toilet is. So as the coffee table converts
Every
up,
good home needs a toilet coffee table.
don't you
for
that what
sure.
you want to be putting your coffee in your snacks? And so it flips up and ends up becoming like a privacy wall. So it ends up becoming your bathroom. Versus you just like being out in the open. So that's nice. It kind of divides off the space. But then when you're not using the bathroom, it's keeping the whole floor plan really, really open. So you'll have people make dedicated bathrooms for sure that cut it. But we wanted the whole space, like there's nothing to really be blocking where your head was. So the whole space was really, really, really clear and open. So we didn't want to have anything super tall coming up that was going to block that and make it feel smaller.
so there's not like upper cabinets or
No,
anything.
nothing like
and
that.
honestly, like we have so much storage that like it was,
Yeah.
I don't think it was
Couch
necessary.
and under the bed and our kitchen cabinets,
Mhm.
we never were lacking storage.
No, and we would have like a lot. We would have food. I mean, when we had to quarantine for 2 weeks inside of our bus, like we were able to pack enough food for 2 weeks in that bus. And it also has all of the stuff we need to cook with too, like even our stove and our propane and all this stuff. So it works. We're not one to go grocery shopping very often. So if we can manage, other people can manage for sure.
Did you run all these systems then? Did you, so you said did you run water and electric?
We had
propane?
solar in terms of electric. Jane kind of headed the solar project.
Yeah, I became the biggest solar nerd of like, if it was a sunny day, if my panels were at green, like it changed my life. Like I would be in a mood based on like what our battery levels were for our solar panels. So I just found it like so fascinating and exciting that we were getting free electricity from the sun.
It was great.
So I loved it. And so we had electricity that ran just a set of lights, and then we had our cooler hooked up as well.
So it was like it was an electric cooler. So it's not quite a fridge. It doesn't set an exact temperature. It just sets, I can't remember what it is in Fahrenheit, but it was like, so it kept our food cold. We had no problems with it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so we had those for amenities in terms of electricity, and then an outlet to charge our computers, phones, things like that. And then for water, we just did a gravity fed system. So we had basically a water jug on top of a shelf that would go down into our sink, which then had a gray water bucket underneath. So really rudimentary. We didn't want to go super extreme on, plumbing, electrical, things like that, just because well, one, we were building it ourselves and didn't super know how. And then two, it's like if you're on the road and your water pump's breaking and you're in the middle of the desert, what are you going to do? Whereas we had simple things that we knew we could fix.
They couldn't break.
Yeah.
Yeah. The thing, they were so low tech that
Yeah.
like, how does water dripping from a high place to a low place break? It just does.
Exactly.
Like you open the spout, water comes out. So it's like, it was kind of good. It honestly would be like $50 to put in a water pump.
Mm-hmm.
Like it'd be such an easy thing for us to add in now if somebody were to want that.
Mm-hmm.
It's the electrical's right there for it. But we just were like, it's so easy. Like it's so just like there's nothing to worry about. You didn't have to worry about anything breaking. It was like anyone could be in here and know how to make it work. Yeah. So we did that, and then we had propane, propane two burner stove.
You can tell who the cook was.
I made one thing one time. 9 months. Oh god.
What do you guys think the biggest obstacle is you overcame in that renovation?
Like working together. Obviously, we had different visions, and starting a project when neither of us really knows what to do, but we both had very good ideas. We both thought we knew what.
Like, how many people do you know who are together and in business with their partner? I know that I'm asking you two, and you.
Right. We've been doing it for 20 years, but.
Right. But really, when you're going into renovation project, you're going into business with your partner. Mm-hmm. And it's not just like a fun weekend thing. It's intense. It costs it costs a lot of money. It's savings. And it's a lot of problem solving. And if you've never been a partner when they're trying to problem solve something that isn't in relation to your relationship or your, fun kind of thing, it's a little stressful. Yeah. And I mean, we're better for it now. Obviously, we know how to do it. We know how to communicate now going through that, and we're able to work. But you don't realize that, you just see couples on Instagram and on YouTube, and you're like, oh, they're doing it. It looks so fun. Like they look so cute holding their hammers. But then meanwhile, you're like sweating and swearing because this screw keeps stripping. Yeah, and you're like, so it's stressful. Yeah. And seeing your partner be under that stress and not taking it personally is something you have to work on. And that comes with time.
Your renovation after the bus, how's this relationship, the working together, how's that progressed? Do you guys have any systems in place? Or?
I think it's a lot better. I think that we've realized that we work and communicate in slightly different ways, and just like understanding that.
And understanding the ways that other person needs to hear things.
Exactly.
And the way that the other person will communicate things. And then you just have to interpret that into your own way. But it's great. Like I think every couple should do it, but it may break you up. Like you might not make it through. I'm warning you. But if you do, you're definitely stronger for it. Yeah. And I think any couple that's undergone like a huge renovation that they've spearheaded themselves, like that, they'll be able to tell you the same story, right? Like renovation has a way of just like getting in there. But
and I think too, one of the key things that we've learned is balance as well, of like knowing to step away from the project and go for a walk together and do like you're spending,
not take it too seriously.
And like you're spending so much time together, but it's all like working time and not relaxing time. And I feel like it's, important to also like spend time that isn't working on your thing.
That is still together. Like your relationship time, the time you would have spent if you didn't have the same job.
And not counting renovation time as relationship time. Because it's like, we spend all our time together. Why do we feel like we haven't even seen each other? And it's because it's like a different mindset.
You're working the whole time, for sure.
Well, kudos to the both of you for growing and surviving.
Yeah, we did it.
Yeah, right. Because I mean, even with like COVID in general, like you hear about all the relationships that failed because people were forced to spend the whole day together every day.
Yeah, and we accidentally started isolating with one another 9 months before everyone else had to. So we were like, "Well, we've been isolating for years now." It's been quite intense.
Yeah, we hear you, and we've gone through a lot of that personally too, and we've been working together around like 20 years, and so that's there's definitely like everything you said, You hit it right on
It's
the
probably
head.
that learning
For
curve
sure.
at the beginning, right? Now you're getting into a routine.
Mhm.
Like it's if it works for you, for us, like I love working with her
Yeah.
now, and I'm still a teacher. And when I have to go back to teaching, I'm like, I'm so sad to be leaving you. Like I just want to be
Yeah.
working with you today, you know? And it's maybe created some really unhealthy codependency. I'm not sure, but but we're really like it when it works, it works and it feels like bliss, and I feel so lucky to be able to work with my partner every day. But you know, it's not for everyone. I won't lie. I won't say that it is, because I don't know if everyone should do it, but
Yeah.
maybe you should try. I don't know.
So you guys embarked on this journey. How did that all go?
A ton of similar to, you know, working with your partner, living in an 80 square foot space.
Well, again,
in
it
a
was
new
isolation.
place.
It was isolation before isolation was a thing. Like that's what we didn't know anyone. We were traveling just and we were just 24/7 together, and that had never happened before. So it was, but you also see like there was this pressure from Instagram. Like you see all these van lifers out there having like their bliss life, and we were like, wait, why am I still feeling like stressed or frustrated when we didn't get this thing? Or like, why am I not having the best time of my entire life? And then you feel guilty for it, which makes you only feel worse, because now you're feeling guilty when you're supposed to be living your dream. So I think we had to come to the realization of like, oh, you're still the same people, you're just in a bus now traveling. Like you're not all of a sudden having the most perfect life. You just like you're still you, right? Real life still happens. You still have to do your laundry. You still have to clean the dishes after you eat. You still have to do these things you normally don't like doing. Like, so it's, you know, you still have to find where you're going to sleep every night and do all this stuff. So
it was like a lot of managing our expectations and like rearranging our view of what the trip would be. But then by the end of our trip, we got into like a super good routine where like it was just so great.
So
like
good.
the last maybe probably I guess 2.5 months we're
like we were never upset. Like we were just so happy.
Like it took us so long to get there to be like, this is how much water we'll be using and this is where to find it. This is like a good place, like to just figure everything out took a really long time, but it was so worth it in the end, because it for, you know, 2.5 of the 9 months, which sounds ridiculous, because I mean obviously there were times before then when it was great, but like once we finally got into a routine,
that was like a good chunk
so
of time.
great.
It's like, cut us off right at the worst time ever. It was like we were having such a nice time, and it cut us off at the beginning when we were both kind of like, I don't even know if we like this. Like, maybe we would have been okay, but we were like, oh, come on, we were just loving it.
At the beginning of the trip, we literally had a conversation where we said, should we sell the bus, take all of the money that we saved, and just go to Europe for a month and
just blow it all, like just
blow it all.
You know, and in part it was because, you know, there's this, we were putting too much pressure on ourselves and on the trip. We had this pressure of, as soon as you get in the van and you pull away, it's going to be perfect. And anytime there was something that was mildly imperfect, it made us upset, because we were like, this is supposed to be perfect, what's going on? But then we additionally had the extra pressure of, it was also acting as our honeymoon. And on your honeymoon, you're just lovey-dovey and everything's perfect and you're just having the nicest time, and there's not a care and not a worry in the world, right? And so we had these two like stigmas telling us we're supposed to be having the absolute most perfect time. And, you know, in reality, it was a super intense heat wave, like one of the hottest heat waves that was hitting Canada. And there was a hurricane that came through. Like we didn't have AC. We were so hot. People were coming like, I don't know, like telling us to leave. And like, it was just like, it wasn't the perfect thing that we had pictured it being. And we had to just come to realize, like, that's okay. Like, it's okay. It doesn't have to be perfect for it to be amazing. And once we came to that, it's not like we didn't have problems in our last 2.5 months, but we just didn't let the problems bother us, because we could see the greater picture. We were thankful to be there. We were thankful to be having all these new experiences, and we didn't let it bother us. So because of that, we were just always positive. We were like having such a good mindset.
That's a lot what life is all about, right? I mean,
Bow
it's,
T,
it's not just bus life. It's
No, very true.
Yeah,
That's
no,
so true.
absolutely.
I think I read on your blog a
yeah.
story too. Was this early on when you like literally got stuck in the mud with the bus?
That was about maybe 4 or 5 months into our trip. So we should have known better. We should have like known our bus enough to like know its capabilities.
But I will say in our defense, it was totally dry. We were out of the region of like having data on our phones and stuff. Like we were just out of cell reception, which is why it made it so much scarier that we
So
got
you're just
stuck.
like in the middle of nowhere.
We were in the middle of nowhere in the Blue Ridge Mountains in Virginia. I'm gonna say maybe North Carolina at that point, but anyway, in the Blue Ridge Mountains, like there. And it was amazing. It was a gorgeous place, and we had this campfire on this like free land that you're allowed to camp at in national forest, and then it rained overnight, and we didn't even think anything of it because it's rained plenty of times, and you hear the rain on the tin roof, and you're like, oh, this is a dream, like. And then we woke up in the morning and just had a lazy morning, whatever. And then, okay, we should probably leave. And we got stopped.
Yeah, step outside our bus, and it turns out we are like in a mud pit full of slippery leaves, and
it was so deep. It's because it was fall at that point, and it was all the leaves had just fallen, and now they're all covered in mud and water, and it was just like a slip and slide. And it was just massive cliff too, or not cliff, that's like seems way too dramatic. It was this massive hill. And so it's like if we went backwards to try to go forwards again, it was just putting us backwards. Like it wasn't helping.
And then there was a point where if we went back too far, we would have gone right off the edge of the cliff.
Yeah, and broken our mirrors off all these trees. It was stressful. And it was, but I will say, because we had the stress of the bus build and that we had tried to learn to how to react and how to work together through stressful situations, which we hadn't been previously really in our relationship. We were pretty privileged not to have a very stressful relationship. So we were in another high stress scenario of we're stuck in the middle of nowhere. We haven't seen a single person. Like we saw one person that morning, like hours before. We hadn't thought of anything of it. And no other cars have driven by. We don't even really know where we are on the map. So we don't know which direction we could walk to find the closest people to get someone to help us.
Oh no.
We have no idea. Like we wouldn't know. We're in the middle of this mountain. So do we climb up to the top of the mountain, or do we go down and assume there's a town? And we were like, nope, we're going to figure it out. We're going to get ourselves out of here. And I'm not joking you. I was the main driver. I was sitting in the car throughout the whole trip. I was the main driver, and throughout life, I'm just kind of the driver. Not because Jane's not a good driver, just because I'm way too controlling. And if she drives, I'm like, nah, like we're going to die. And like, we're totally fine. But I know it's in my head, but anyway. So I was sitting in the car, and she was telling me forward, backward, that kind of thing. And I swear to God, she was going into the forest, and it was hunting season, which also made this extra stressful.
Oh my
gosh.
Like
going in the forest and like collecting little sticks. But she was there collecting all these twigs and pretty much weaving together like bridges to go from these twigs to go over top of these mud holes and these roots, and creating ramps out of all of these twigs. And as soon as you drive over them, they push them so deep into the mud that you have to now go collect more. So she probably collected thousands of twigs that day and like wove together this like
it was hours
intense bridge. It was three full hours of us, and it was like maybe 10 feet. Like we were 10 feet away from the road. Like it was not a far distance. We were going like
just
an eighth of an inch by an eighth of an inch.
You have to kind of go forward 4 inches and then back 2, and then
felt like forward, back 10. I swear it was wild. But we got out. We did, obviously. We're not still there. Coming live from Blue Ridge Parkway. No, we got out, and it was pouring rain. Oh yeah, also it was pouring rain this entire time. So she's just covered in mud, like.
I also thought that I would be strong enough to help by pushing the bus.
And I was like,
your
we don't
car
know.
Is stuck in the snow.
You get behind
a
a
bunch of
push.
That's what Canada taught us.
Me and our bus, I don't even know how many tons it weighs, but
like probably 4 billion tons.
But I would also be shouting at Em, go, and then I would be just pretending to push because I doubt I would
you were,
do anything.
but you were pushing
I was
with
pushing
your full
with my
might.
full might, and the mud would from the back wheel would skid up and just cover my entire body.
And her glasses were just covered. Like she'd have to take it off, and there would just be circles for where her glasses were. It was very comical, but it was so stressful because we didn't know what was going to happen.
Any pictures of this?
Yeah, we took a few pictures. I took a video. Yeah. I took a video of it. We've posted on our Instagram. I made a little story or a little video about it on our YouTube channel that I posted, probably a year ago now.
Check it out.
But it's there. It's there.
Yeah.
You can dig through. It was this intense moment, but we got out, and it was like I had never been prouder of someone in my entire life. Like I was so proud of this person, and I happened to be married to this person, that it was like one of the like highest points of my life was just being like you did it. Yeah, I don't know how, I don't know if you could again, but you did it, and oh my gosh. And we were both just beaming. We were so proud that, again, it was like it felt like this huge lesson of like you just have to decide you're not going to give up.
Yeah.
Like that's it. And that was what the schoolie taught us too. And like, that's what then, this getting stuck in the mud taught us. And that's what us building our first camper taught us is like, if you decide you want to do it, you can do it.
Did you hug her or make her go clean up first?
I think I made her stand it's not like we had seen cars, so no one was coming. And I just made her practically shower in the rain.
Yeah.
And then I was just throwing clothes.
So.
Oh, it was raining as you're doing this? Oh.
I don't care. Like, whatever.
That's an amazing
See, everybody
story.
doesn't get those stories.
No.
And some couples have to pay for therapy, and this is,
that's all
going to bring
it
you
is.
closer than being
That's
stuck
true.
in the forest. And
Yeah.
I wonder what it is in your past, Jane, the bridge building, stick weaving skills. Like where is that somewhere deep in your ancestry?
Some ancestors. Yeah, exactly. From my,
Pioneer
great grandparents just living in like huts of bone on the.
Right. There has to be some innate like primal
Oh, for sure.
something or another that came to the surface.
Just like a feral child, and just like the wolves told me to do this. Like, God.
I could picture you howling in the mud.
Yeah. Basically,
She was pretty much that's what was happening.
Yeah.
The next day she couldn't move. Like it was like she had been run over by the bus.
Yeah,
like she was so
sore.
sore because she gave it her all.
It was
every
basically
time.
as though you just went to a brick wall and pushed really hard.
As
against
hard
it
as you
for,
could
like,
for 3 hours, and like while mud and rocks were being just hurled at your face.
So how did you guys come up with the name Camp Lovesick? Where does that come from?
Okay, so it originally came from we were first going into work together as I was just making some embroidery stuff and some art, and we were opening a little booth at these arts markets.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was kind of our like art brand, and we have this general vibe of just like looking like we're always camp counselors, even though like Jane's 32, she just like still looks like she's a camp counselor. And
No
like
matter
that's
what.
just like our general aesthetic
Yeah.
is like, are you currently counseling some children right now? But it was just this name that
kind of kept applying to all of the things that we were doing.
yeah, and now we're like, oh yeah, it feels like we love camping, and we're so like head over heels for camping and adventure, and now all of a sudden it works in that context. And then we started this camper renovation business, and we're like, now we renovate campers, and the name of it is Camp Lovesick. Like, well, that also applies. Like, so it's kind of gained meaning as we've gone, and we like that it just sends out this message of like we're so in love with the world and camping and nature that
We're sick.
we're sick about it.
So you guys got back from your trip and you decided to renovate a travel trailer. How do you feel that renovating that travel trailer differed from renovating the schoolie?
But we weren't yelling most of the time. We had 9 months of us traveling in the schoolie that we renovated together. It was like we'd spent so much time with one another. We had been under so many stressful scenarios, like the mud, mud accidents.
Yeah.
That we knew how to communicate with one another, and we knew it was still a learning curve.
Yeah.
We still
we had
were better,
way more experience in terms of tools and building and things like that.
We had a general understanding of construction.
Yeah.
And
I think too, by that point, not only had we lived in a small space for a super long time, we'd also had a chance to meet other people living in buses and RVs and vans and things like that. So we had a really good sense of like what a space needs to be.
We have really good repertoire of like what are our options. Like it wasn't just Google a thing and see what you like. It's like,
how do you feel that changed, like the before to to this point? Like what did you learn about that
option, right? Like before it was just, I think this is gonna work, I think. And it's just, here we had lived in a tiny space, we knew how much storage was appropriate, where you want the storage, and we knew how the function. We always had the aesthetic, because I've just been really into like art and interior design for my whole life, but we understood based on living in it ourselves and then meeting hundreds of people who were living in it and seeing their spaces and hearing their comments about their spaces. We got a really good, well-rounded sense of what needs to happen in a tiny space for it to feel functional and beautiful.
Are there specific things that you feel you changed your perspective on? Like, is there any like one thing you can point to and be like, beforehand we thought this was a good idea, and now after that 9 months and living in the bus, it really should be like this is the most practical or reasonable way to do something?
I think, the camper that we got was laid out so poorly. I think I think you either want something, if something has a function, you want it to be a function that functions fully, not something that sort of works. Like in this camper that we had, our first camper, like the door, there was a door to the bathroom.
Oh yeah.
But one, it didn't fully open, and two,
because it hit the closet across from it.
Had like a huge space at the top and a huge space at the bottom, so it like didn't give you the
privacy you wanted,
the like auditory privacy, and it just didn't like work open and closed, and so it's just,
and the only way to access the bathroom was you had to fully go into the bedroom and slightly climb on the bed so you could open the door so you could get into the bathroom. So it was like, this door is ridiculous.
Yeah, so it's just like, and I find in a lot of campers there seems to be a lot of like, sure, that sort of works, but I think it's better we ended up just like taking out the door already didn't block the sound, and we said, you know what, that's already a compromise, so we're just going to take it out and put in a curtain instead. And it's like a useful curtain, and it's something that actually works into like,
because now there's a perk to it, right? It's the same con of there's no like noise dampening, but you have the perk of it's way lighter weight and it's actually functional. In terms of our bus, honestly, like our assumptions were pretty bang on with what our needs were. Like, I don't think we would change our bus if we were going to head back out on the road for another year. I don't think we would really change anything about it. It worked really well for us. But when we see campers now, we look and we're like, whoa, all of these things are really bad and inefficient. And it's just,
or they just don't think about the same things. Like in this new camper that we're renovating now, it's like you walk in the door, but where are you going to put your shoes? Like when you get into a space, if you're using this in the summer, you're going to the beach and stuff, you have a whole bunch of sandy shoes and sandy stuff. It's like, that's something that there needs to be a place for. There needs to be a place for like things that there needs to be a dedicated like spot for your garbage and recycling, just things like that you might not think about unless you're actually living in the spaces.
And you have to, it's almost as though it's changing our mindset, because we're going into renovating campers now with this mindset of seeing all of these different vans and schoolies and tiny homes and thinking about it from this like tiny living mindset, versus I feel like, I mean, this is throwing a lot of shade, but I feel like camper builders are coming from the mindset of people who've lived in houses and now just taking a house and making it smaller. And it's like, no, they're not the same thing. A tiny house isn't just a house that's small. It's like very efficient, very functional. Like every single inch of space counts. So every single inch of space should have a purpose for something. Even if that purpose is to give yourself a break and have some open space to feel airiness and openness, like that's still a very valid purpose. But why would you put those 4 inches then behind the couch? Like that's not helping. So it's kind of, we have this like making everything serve a purpose and have way more pros than it does cons. And that having that outlook and going in with that critical eye then made us we made some bold changes in our first camper. Like we changed the layout of it pretty decently just by changing the bathroom, and like we doubled the size of the bathroom, and it was pretty wild. But that's just because we knew that it needed to be done. Like we knew that it was just a waste if we didn't do it.
Do you have a preference between the two genres, like travel trailer camper versus schoolie? Which, if you were to pick one remodel over the others, or a direction you lean now?
Schoolie is like you're doing the whole thing yourself. So if that's exciting to you, of like you want to know how to build the frame of a couch, or you want to know how to, like, you're doing everything. It's just an open, space, a box, and you fill the box. Whereas campers, it's like you can still gut it if you want to, but if you get one that's in decent shape, you could just fix it. Like you could make things nicer in it and work off of what has already been done.
You aren't worrying about plumbing and electricity
or even heating. You're still running it, but at least they've already thought of the where the pipes go, and you're just running new ones. You know what I mean?
It's
so
there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's less of the planning and more of the doing, I think, with camper renovations. And schoolies are way more of the planning, and still equal doing, but like they're way more, you're figuring out your whole layout because you're starting from scratch, right? I think it would be comparable to just getting a camper that's just a shell, like an outer shell, and you're building the whole thing yourself. It's a similar thing, right? But
so how do you feel personally though? Which one would you pick?
I'm very pro camper these days.
Like to live in or to do again? Like to build?
To take on as a project. Well, I guess both. Give us both perspectives.
Okay. My answers are different.
Okay. I think both. I'm pro camper. Like after building the schoolie, then moving over to a camper where it's like, oh, I don't need to figure out how I'm going to cook and where I'm going to use the bathroom and things like that. And I can just like make it look really nice.
Yeah.
Was like so refreshing.
It's the fun part.
I bet.
Yeah. It's like, I'm not like hauling these like nasty seats out. Obviously there's a lot of like nasty stuff that you're hauling out in a camper renovation.
But it doesn't last as long.
It doesn't last as long, and it just gives you like such a foundation already, whereas a schoolie is like so blank that there ends up being like a lot more of that like time where things look bad before you can like make it look good. And also campers in general are so ugly that in some ways the transformation is so much more extreme, even than going from a school bus to a schoolie. Like going from something that's like horrifically ugly, throw a coat of paint on, add some nice trim, and suddenly it took you not that long to make it incredible.
Yeah. I think for living in, now we're probably going to go with campers because we can afford to buy a truck now. Woohoo! Yeah. Years have happened, which is exciting. And so now it makes sense for us. I think the reason for us, like for living in, why I'd prefer a camper is because I like the option of how, like, we could detach the house from the vehicle part. So that is exciting for us because I would like to just leave my house in one spot and then go get groceries. But with that being said, it was so convenient so many times that you just bring your whole house with you everywhere you go. You never have to remember anything because it's always right beside you. So
it's with you.
It was nice.
Exactly. When we got home, we kept forgetting our wallets because our wallets were always just like right there beside us in our house, which is also there.
Which is also the car. And it's like, or you're getting groceries and they're like, should we put these in bags? And you're like, no, it's okay. And they're like, you're just putting everything. And we're like, well, yeah, it's going directly into my fridge, which just happens to be outside in the parking lot. So it was great. But that was a little bit of a sidestep. But I will say, so I think having the ability to detach them makes more sense for where we're going in our future, because we're not thinking there's going to be years on end where we're full-time living in a camper or a schoolie again. So we would like to be able to have it so that we could use the truck on a regular basis as well. Like, we've had the school bus this whole time, but we're only using it to travel in. Like, I'm not going to go get our groceries with the school bus so anymore. It just seems a little wasteful. So that's kind of our one thing. I would like to work on it or live in those now. But I think for people starting out, I would definitely, school buses just make sense. Like, they're not that expensive, and it's you're choosing your own battle, you're picking your own path. What is that expression? Like, you get to decide how much it's going to cost you and how extravagant or luxe or simple it's going to be, because it's you who's doing the whole thing. And that makes it really accessible. Like, if you only have $6,000, the whole thing could cost you only $6,000. Like, you'd have to get creative, but it could work, whereas that's the same thing with the camper for sure, if you're renovating a camper, but then how are you moving it? So if moving it is a thing that matters to you, I would say school buses are like the easiest setup if you don't already own a car that has the ability to tow.
And too, with a school bus, like, you're putting all the systems in, so you know exactly what you're getting and you know how everything works. Whereas in a camper, it's like you could renovate 3/4 of it and then hook it up to water, and then like all of your pipes end up leaking and being bad, and you're like, oh shoot, I've already put all this time in. I don't know how to fix all of these things or fix the furnace or whatever. Whereas in a school bus, like,
everything you put in there, you did. So you know how it all works. If anything breaks, you built it the first part, so you can fix it, So it forces you to know everything about the vehicle that you're living in. Whereas campers, you can just put a coat of paint on it and hope that it's okay, but behind that wall, it's actually rotting. Like, and you have no idea, right? Because you didn't know what to check for. So yeah, I don't know. There's pros and cons to both. I think it kind of depends on what life stage you're at. Personally, right now, we're in the life stage where we're selling our bus, and we're going to get a truck and a truck top camper. So just like a tiny little guy. Nice. It's pretty much going to be just a little bit smaller than the inside of the school bus. So that's perfect for us. It's perfect for the kind of adventures we want to have. But then we can, when we're not doing our adventure and we're back to work, we can just take the truck topper off and use it to go get stuff from Home Hardware or whatever. That's a Canadian one, but our hardware store, Home Depot.
I had another question specifically about Schoolies. I just thought about, to me, like, a school bus is almost like a tank. Like, it's just so giant, so heavy. With travel trailers, like, a lot of times you have to have consideration to how much weight you're putting into them. Is that a concern with a Schoolie, or is it like there's so much cargo capacity that it doesn't?
It is and it isn't. I don't think it's a concern in the sense of like you wouldn't be able to drive it anymore, but it is a concern in the sense of, if you're planning on doing this big trip and you're planning on driving a lot in your schoolie, then the less it weighs, the better gas mileage you're going to get, right? So it's more just in that sense, but I don't think in terms of living, like what you would put in to make it livable, I don't think you really have to be worried.
Like our bus had 10 seats in it, and we could barely lift a single seat by ourselves. Like, the two of us had to lift the seats. Like, we took out so much weight that I feel
and it's meant to carry kids too, so all that weight as well, right? So I think in terms of mechanics, like, you could put whatever you want inside of a schoolie. I don't think,
maybe not like a hot tub, but
but we know somebody with a sauna, so you could do that. but like, you could put, you wouldn't really have to worry about the weight, I don't think. Like, I've seen somebody with a piano in there, so like, it's like a full not a keyboard, like a piano. So it's but the more weight you add, obviously the less economical it is to drive. So if you're thinking you're only just going to use it to travel short distances and do these kinds of things, then whatever, put your piano in it, go do it, have the best life. But for us,
we just moved the piano out of the house, so I can directly visualize how heavy that would be to add to something.
But for us, we knew we were going to do pretty much the perimeter of North America, more or less. Well, Canada and the States, I'll say, so not North America, but we're going to do the perimeter of it, and we knew that meant a lot of miles. So we were trying to make it fairly, we were only putting in materials that we knew had a purpose and were necessary. And that was the thing that we did. But you don't really have to worry about it, I don't think.
Yeah.
I love that you guys are definitely proof that if you dream something, you can make it happen. If there's someone out there right now that's considering taking on a Schoolie renovation, what's like some advice you have for them?
Can I one piece?
Sorry. Oh no, you say it. I don't know.
I already have.
Okay, well you say it. Yeah.
My one piece is know that it's not going to be perfect, and know that it's the thing you build isn't going to be perfect, but also the experience of building it isn't going to be perfect. You're going to run into hurdles. You're going to run into like times where you think maybe I should quit. And my biggest piece of advice is just don't take that. Like, just don't decide not to quit. Like, that just, if you have it in your mind, it's going to work out. It's going to work out because I know you won't let it not, So for us, it was just like, no, we'll keep coming across problems and we'll keep solving them to the best of our abilities. And maybe it's not what we expected. Maybe it didn't turn out in the exact same way that we had envisioned, but it turned out, and that's the thing that counts, because now you still have it. You have it and you can use it, and you can go and keep dreaming and doing those adventures that led you to start this process in the first place. So I think it's honestly a lot of it is mindset. It's just deciding to realizing the expectations and realizing that it's not going to be bliss #bliss the whole time, but that's okay. Like that's life. Like
that, and just like also be patient with yourself, and like if you make a mistake, just
don't be scared of failure.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, it's fine. Jane and I would say often when we were building the bus the first time, like, we never went to college for this. We never did like a trades program. So any mistake that we would have, and we'd be like, oh, like that material, we can't use it now, and it costs us $30. Like, oh, that, like, and and you're kicking yourself for it because you're trying to make your money go the furthest you can. We would just say, well, that's $30 towards our college tuition of figuring out how to do this. You know what I mean? Like, school costs so much, and that's a whole thing entirely. But it was just like, maybe make up a little excuse for yourself to give yourself some space and give yourself some grace for when you mess up. Like, that's how we learn. And I know that's the teacher in me coming out, but like, it's fine to fail, and don't be so scared of it. And when you fail, don't beat yourself up. Like, be like, okay, cool, now I know. And then for next time, it is easier because you made that mistake before. And just being okay with it, being okay with it and moving forward.
You've really summed it up really perfectly. It just kind of makes me even feel even more, even though we live this on a day-to-day basis, that RV renovation might be a metaphor for life and all the puzzles you come across and like moving forward. And I think you put this so well, and we appreciate the time you've taken to share with us and all the information and the stories. What are the best places for people to kind of catch up with you and the work that you're doing? And do you have any other services that you're offering up that people could take advantage of?
So Instagram's definitely our biggest one. Yeah. We've been on and off YouTube, and I think we'll continue to be on and off YouTube. More just depends. Right now, I'm also a full-time teacher, so it's just how thinly can we stretch ourselves, But Instagram, we're never going to let that die. It's definitely been so cool to connect with so many people and create a sense of community there, and inspire people and have other people inspire us, and like have that all build off in one another. So it's at Camp Lovesick on Instagram. That's our biggest one. But on and off, we'll definitely in the future through Instagram, you'll see like we'll have YouTube videos, and I've been exploring TikTok, just mainly to understand what the kids are talking about. And
it's probably over already.
Oh, I know.
We all missed it.
I'm still on MySpace, so if anyone wants to follow me there.
Not true. But Jane, when she's feeling inspired, works on our blog and that kind of thing. So we do a lot of different things, but Instagram's the main one. In terms of services, honestly, we were experimenting with doing some custom things for people, some custom homes, and we kind of realized, this sounds so bad, but kind of realized we just like being our own bosses more. And
for sure.
So we honestly, I think for our future for now, we're thinking that, yes, if you are listening to this and you are thinking you need someone on your side who has some experience, we would definitely consider being hired on as a consultant. But other than that, you can buy the things that we make, or just admire them. And we're probably not going to work on something with you, mainly just because we are hard enough to work with as it is, just the two of us. So probably shouldn't add another person in the mix.
But our camper that we're renovating now will be finished in the spring, and then we're also going to sell our bus in the spring if anyone wants a pre-made schoolie.
Yeah.
Or
Awesome.
Those will just be listed on your website, or do you have plans?
Our website
Instagram?
and Instagram. Yeah,
Okay.
for sure. Yeah, Instagram's the main one. So if you follow us on there, you won't miss a video for sure.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much.
thanks so much for having us. It was nice to talk to you.
Yeah, it was so nice to talk to you both.
We appreciate it. So lots of life lessons there.
Yeah, maybe there'll have to be a schoolie in our future.
You never know. So thanks again to Em and Jane.
And make sure if you haven't already to go ahead and follow them over on Instagram and on their website at camplovesick.com.
And if you like the show, please be sure to subscribe.
You can find links to do that on our website at newlookrv.com.
And if you have any friends who are interested in RV Renovation Nation, be sure to tell them all about the show.
We also have a YouTube channel where video versions of the podcast, as well as other great content, is shared.
And of course, to stay up to date with us and the other projects we have going on, check us out on Instagram.
See you next time, RV Renovation Nation.